Civilizations don't fall with explosions. They crumble in silence, applauded by crowds who mistake ruin for progress. And what if I told you that the true apocalypse doesn't come from the outside? It's born every time we decide that thinking is just too much work. Have you ever stopped to notice how intellectual mediocrity has become not just acceptable, but celebrated? We live in an era where questioning is offensive, where ignorance wears the mask of opinion, and where superficiality is sold as virtue. We're not facing a crisis of resources or technology. We're facing something far more devastating, a crisis of thought. And the scariest part, most people don't even realize it's happening. The great empires of history weren't destroyed solely by foreign invaders or natural catastrophes. Rome didn't fall in a day. It rotted from within for centuries, while its citizens distracted themselves with bread and circuses, while corruption became part of the system, while the pursuit of truth was replaced by the pursuit of immediate comfort. The historian Edward Gibbon, when studying the fall of Rome, identified a disturbing pattern. When a society stops valuing knowledge and begins rewarding complacency, its fate is already sealed. The enemy's sword merely formalizes what had already died inside. And here we are, repeating the same mistakes, convinced that we're different, that we're more evolved. But look around. How many deep conversations have you had in the last week? How many times have you seen someone change their mind when faced with a well-constructed argument? How many times have you allowed yourself to be convinced of something new, something that challenged your most fundamental beliefs? Normalized stupidity doesn't scream, it whispers. It disguises itself as practicality, as realism, as that's just how things are. It transforms mental laziness into a life philosophy and calls it maturity. Aldous Huxley, in his visionary work, warned that we wouldn't need tyrants to enslave us. We just needed to fall in love with our chains, and that's exactly what happened. We weren't dominated by force. We were seduced by empty entertainment, by instant gratification, by the illusion that being informed is the same as being intelligent. We consume headlines as if they were absolute truths. We form opinions on complex subjects in seconds, and we call this being up to date. The philosopher Hannah Arendt coined the term banality of evil when observing how atrocities can be committed by ordinary people who simply stop thinking. But there's something even more insidious. The banality of stupidity. It's when stopping thinking becomes not just common, but expected. When questioning the obvious turns you into an inconvenience. When depth is seen as pretentiousness and superficiality as accessibility. But why did we reach this point? What led us to normalize intellectual mediocrity as if it were a democratic right? The answer lies in something few want to admit. Thinking hurts. Truly thinking, questioning your own certainties, confronting your internal contradictions, this requires courage. And we live in an era that promised us we could have everything without effort. Learning without studying, growing without suffering, evolving without changing. Technology, which should have been our greatest ally in the pursuit of knowledge, has become the perfect instrument for infinite distraction. We have access to all human wisdom in the palm of our hand, and we use it to watch 15-second videos about absolutely nothing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to demonize technology or romanticize a past that never existed. Every era has had its fools and its wise. The difference is that today the fools have megaphones and the wise are silenced by the algorithm. The difference is that today stupidity has an audience, sponsorship, and a verification badge. And when you try to point this out, you're accused of elitism, of arrogance, of not accepting the plurality of opinions, as if all opinions had the same value. As if the opinion of someone who studied a subject for decades was worth the same as someone who read a 3-line post. Maybe you're recognizing yourself in some of these words. Maybe you're thinking of moments when you yourself gave in to mental laziness, when you chose the comfort of ignorance instead of the discomfort of truth. If so, know that you're not alone. All of us, at some point, have fallen into this trap. The difference lies in recognizing the fall and choosing to get back up. Think about the conversations you have in your daily life. How many of them challenge you? How many make you leave different from how you entered? We live surrounded by people, connected 24 hours a day, and yet we're lonelier than ever in our thinking. Because true connection doesn't happen when we automatically agree. It happens when we have the courage to disagree, to explore, to admit that we don't know. One of the greatest signs of normalized stupidity is the inability to say, "I don't know." We live in a culture where having an opinion on everything is mandatory, where admitting ignorance is a sign of weakness. But Socrates, more than 2,000 years ago, had already understood that true wisdom begins exactly there, in recognizing one's own ignorance. "I know that I know nothing" wasn't a phrase of false humility. It was the foundation of all genuine pursuit of knowledge. If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe so you don't miss this journey. Now, the question that really matters: what can we do? How do we resist this tide of mediocrity that threatens to drown us? The first step is recognizing that the battle begins within us. There's no point in pointing fingers at others while you yourself feed on empty content, while you yourself avoid difficult conversations, while you yourself prefer being right over discovering the truth. Collective transformation only happens through individual transformations, and this demands something that has become rare: mental discipline. Mental discipline doesn't mean being serious all the time or abandoning entertainment. It means consciously choosing what you allow into your mind. It means questioning the source before sharing. It means reading beyond the headline. It means sitting with a difficult book and persisting even when your brain begs for something easier. It means having conversations where you actually listen, not just wait for your turn to speak. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we don't control the external world, but we control our mind. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and one of the last great philosophers of antiquity, wrote in his personal journal about the importance of guarding the mind as one guards a fortress. He knew that the true battlefield wasn't at the borders of the empire, but within each citizen. And when the citizens abandoned that internal battle, the empire fell. Modern psychology confirms what the ancients already knew intuitively. Our brain is lazy by nature. It constantly seeks shortcuts, patterns, ways to save energy. This was useful when we lived in caves and needed to react quickly to threats. But in the modern world, this same tendency makes us vulnerable to manipulation, to herd thinking, to passive acceptance of ideas we've never truly examined. Overcoming this requires conscious and constant effort. It requires creating rituals of thought, moments in the day when you turn off notifications, close social media, and simply think. It sounds simple, almost ridiculous. But when was the last time you did that? When was the last time you were alone with your thoughts for an hour, without distractions, without external stimuli? Reflective solitude has become a luxury that few can afford, not for lack of time, but for lack of courage. Because when we sit in silence, we're forced to confront who we really are, and often we don't like what we find. But there's a secret even deeper that few people know. Normalized stupidity isn't just an individual problem, it's a system that profits from your distraction, that feeds on your mental laziness, that grows every time you choose the easier path. Algorithms are designed to keep you scrolling infinitely. News is written to provoke emotional reactions, not to inform. Products are sold by creating artificial needs. And all of this works perfectly because we stopped thinking. The philosopher Guy Debord called this the society of the spectacle. A society where appearance has replaced reality, where seeming has become more important than being. But Debord wrote this in 1967. Imagine what he would say today when the spectacle is no longer something we watch, but something we live in 24 hours a day. The revelation that few are ready to accept is this: you're not just a victim of this system, you're an accomplice. Every time you share without verifying, you feed the machine. Every time you prefer the comfort of the bubble over the pain of questioning, you strengthen the chains. Every time you ridicule someone who thinks differently instead of trying to understand, you become part of the problem. But here's the good news. If you're part of the problem, you can also be part of the solution. Every mind that awakens is a victory. Every genuine conversation is a resistance. Every moment of deep reflection is a revolutionary act in a world that profits from your superficiality. The beginning of the end doesn't have to be your end. It can be the beginning of something new. The moment you decide that you will no longer accept mediocrity as destiny. The moment you choose the discomfort of growth instead of the comfort of stagnation. The moment you understand that thinking is not a luxury, it's a responsibility. Civilizations don't fall because of the barbarians at the gates. They fall when the citizens within the walls forget why the walls were built. They fall when collective memory dissolves into entertainment. They fall when the wisdom of ancestors is discarded as outdated by generations that can't even understand it. You have a choice to make. Every day, in every small decision, you choose which side you're on. You choose whether you will feed stupidity or fight it. You choose whether you will be just another face in the distracted crowd or a mind that refuses to sleep. The true apocalypse doesn't come with fire and destruction. It comes with empty smiles and applause for dead ideas. But as long as there is one person willing to think, to question, to seek the truth even when it hurts, the flame doesn't go out. Be that person. If this video touched something inside you, leave your like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue this journey of awakening. And tell me in the comments, at what moment did you realize you were giving in to normalized stupidity? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. The revolution begins in the mind, and yours has already started.